nature spent millions of years creating both. One became a financial refuge, the other became a symbol of rarity, beauty, and prestige. Both emerged from extraordinary geological events. Both survived unimaginable pressure, heat, and time. Both required the Earth to perform feats that seem almost impossible. Yet today, they are moving in very different directions, and the gap between them is growing. The strange part is that most people never notice the battle happening at all, because it isn't taking place in jewelry stores. It isn't taking place in museums. It isn't taking place inside mining camps. It's taking place inside something far more powerful. Trust. And once you understand how trust works, the entire relationship between gold and gemstones begins to look different. The rocks we investigated earlier were trying to tell us a story. The overlooked fragments, the unusual geological environments, the systems that favored gold, the systems that favored crystals. At first, it seemed like two different geological outcomes. Now we discover something deeper. Nature created both. Humans assigned them completely different roles.
I don't think it really is.
Let's begin with a simple question. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and discover two objects. One is a beautiful natural gemstone. The other is a 1-ounce piece of gold. Both have equal market value. Which would be easier to sell before sunset? Think about that carefully. Not which one is prettier. Not which one is rarer. Not which one took longer to form. Which one could become cash fastest. Most people immediately know the answer. Gold. But why? This is where our investigation begins. Because geology cannot explain that difference. The Earth created both. The market created the separation, and that separation has become one of the most powerful forces shaping modern resource demand. Now here's something fascinating. Nature doesn't care about human definitions of value. A crystal doesn't know it's beautiful. Gold doesn't know it's expensive. To the Earth, both are simply geological outcomes, different solutions to different geological problems. Yet somewhere between the formation of these materials and the modern world, a decision occurred. Humans began treating them differently. One became a store of value, the other became a store of beauty. At first glance, that distinction sounds simple. It isn't, because it affects everything. Exploration, mining, investment, collection, trade, even psychology. Let's investigate why. Imagine two people standing beside each other. One holds gold, the other holds a gemstone. Both believe they possess something valuable. Now ask yourself a strange question. How many people around the world can immediately recognize gold? The answer is astonishing. Millions, perhaps billions. Gold has become one of the most universally recognized materials on Earth. A person may not understand geology, may not understand mining, may not understand economics, yet they recognize gold. Now consider a gemstone. Something interesting happens. Recognition becomes more complicated. Questions appear. What kind is it? Is it natural? Is it treated? What is the quality? How rare is it? How desirable is it? Suddenly, expertise becomes necessary. And that changes everything, because markets love certainty. The more certainty available, the easier transactions become. Gold possesses a unique advantage. Most people know exactly what it is. That simplicity creates trust, and trust creates liquidity. Now here's a question. What do you think happens during periods of uncertainty? When investors become nervous, when markets become unpredictable, when confidence weakens, do people move toward complexity or simplicity? History provides a fascinating answer. Again and again, people move toward assets they trust, not necessarily the rarest, not necessarily the most beautiful, the most trusted. This is one reason gold repeatedly attracts attention during uncertain times. Its role extends beyond geology, beyond jewelry, beyond collecting. Gold has become a form of confidence, and confidence is powerful. Now let's examine something even stranger. Some gemstones required extraordinary geological conditions to form, conditions far more restrictive than many gold deposits. In certain cases, nature worked incredibly hard to create them. The temperature had to be right, the chemistry had to be right, the pressure had to be right, the timing had to be right, everything had to align. And yet, despite this incredible rarity, many of these materials do not command the same level of universal attention as gold. Why? The answer reveals something uncomfortable. Rarity alone does not determine success. If it did, many obscure geological materials would dominate global markets. Instead, success often emerges from a combination of rarity, trust, demand, and simplicity. And gold happens to occupy a unique position where all four intersect. This is where many people begin rethinking value itself, because we are taught that rarity creates worth. Sometimes it does, but not always. Imagine owning the only example of a strange object on Earth. If nobody wants it, what is it worth? Now imagine owning something less rare but universally desired. Which asset becomes more powerful? This question sits at the center of our investigation. Not geology, human behavior. Because once materials leave the ground, psychology takes control. Now let's return to the landscape. Think back to the systems we discussed earlier. The environments that favored gold, the environments that favored crystal. At the geological level, neither system was competing. Nature was simply operating according to physical laws. The competition begins later, when humans assign importance, and those assignments change over time. This is where things become interesting, because value isn't static. History proves that repeatedly. Entire civilizations have changed what they consider important. Trade routes shift, technologies emerge, industries evolve, demand changes. The geological materials remain the same. Human priorities change around them. Gold has benefited from this process for thousands of years. Generation after generation inherited the same assumption. Gold matters. That assumption became self-reinforcing. The more people believed it, the stronger it became. The stronger it became, the more people trusted it. The cycle continued, and today, that momentum remains powerful. Now let me ask you something. What do you think is more difficult? Convincing someone that a rare gemstone has value, or convincing them that gold has value? The answer reveals another advantage. Gold requires less explanation. The market already understands it, and understanding creates efficiency. Efficiency attracts capital. Capital influences demand. Demand influences price. Suddenly, geology and economics become connected. Now here's where the battle becomes visible. Not in the rocks, not in the mines. In attention. Attention has become one of the most valuable resources in the modern world. And right now, gold receives enormous attention. Financial media discusses it. Investors discuss it. Governments monitor it. Markets react to it. That constant attention reinforces its position. Meanwhile, many gemstones operate in smaller circles. Collectors, specialists, enthusiasts, experts. The audience remains narrower, and narrower audiences create different market behavior. Again, this doesn't mean one is better. It means they serve different purposes. That's a crucial distinction. Gold and gemstones aren't actually solving the same problem. Gold often answers questions about preservation. Gemstones often answer questions about rarity and beauty. The Earth created both.
Come on.
Humans gave them different jobs. Now let's consider something few people discuss. If gold disappeared tomorrow, global markets would react immediately. If certain rare gemstones disappeared tomorrow, the reaction would be very different. Not because gemstones lack value, because the roles are different, and roles determine influence. This is why the battle remains largely invisible. Most people assume they're comparing similar things. They're not. They're comparing different functions, different systems, different forms of demand, different types of trust. Now imagine standing in front of a display case. On one side sits a remarkable gemstone. On the other sits gold. Both beautiful, both valuable, both products of extraordinary geological processes. Yet your decision might reveal more about human psychology than geology. Which would you choose? Why? Take a moment, because your answer matters, and not only to you. Millions of similar decisions collectively shape global demand. Those decisions influence prices, exploration budgets, mining strategies, investment flows. The effects spread far beyond individual purchases. Now we arrive at the heart of our investigation. Why is gold winning the battle nobody notices? Not because nature made it superior, not because nature made it rarer, not because geology favored it. Gold is winning because modern systems understand it, markets understand it, institutions understand it, investors understand it, trust surrounds it, and trust is one of the most powerful forces in economics. But here's the twist. History has a habit of surprising people whenever they become too comfortable. Every era believes it understands value perfectly. Then something changes. A new technology, a new resource, a new priority, a new demand. And suddenly the conversation shifts. The materials that once dominated attention must share the spotlight. That's where our investigation begins heading next. Because while gold and gemstones continue their quiet battle, another story is emerging. A story hidden inside ordinary rocks. Materials that don't glitter, materials that aren't worn, materials that rarely appear in display cases. Yet their importance continues growing. And some of the landscapes we have been investigating contain clues pointing directly toward them. The colors, the rocks, the structures, the systems. They were never only about gold. They were never only about gemstones. They were evidence. Evidence that the Earth still contains stories most people haven't learned to read. And in our next investigation, we'll follow one of those stories into territory that looks ordinary at first glance. But appearances can be deceptive. Because some of the most important resources of the future don't look valuable at all until you understand what you're really looking at. One of our most successful journeys explored places where gold quietly waits while thousands of people unknowingly walk past every season. We discovered that nature rarely places valuable materials where people expect to find them. But after that discussion, another question remained. If gold prefers hiding in overlooked environments, do gemstones follow similar rules? Surprisingly, many of them do. And some of the places capable of preserving natural gold nuggets are also remarkably good at protecting crystals, corundum, tourmaline fragments, garnets, and even gem-quality minerals released millions of years ago from their original host rocks. Today, we're going to follow some of the least discussed natural traps that quietly collect and preserve both gold and gemstones while most people continue walking right past them. And perhaps the first one is sitting beneath your feet right now, not inside a river, not inside a mountain, not beneath a quartz vein, but beneath something people have stepped over since childhood without ever slowing down. A tree root. At first, that sounds ridiculous. People associate roots with plants, not geology, not prospecting, certainly not gold. Yet roots behave in surprisingly interesting ways. Large roots gradually expand. They push, twist, lift, displace, and perhaps more importantly, they create protected chambers. Imagine an old tree standing undisturbed for 100 years, then 200 years, then perhaps 300 years. Its roots spread outward. Soil moves, fine sediments wash away during storms. Leaves accumulate, organic matter decomposes, small pebbles migrate, dense particles begin resisting movement. Gold likes resisting movement. Gem fragments also resist movement. Garnets, corundum, tourmaline, even beryl occasionally behaves similarly. And eventually tiny shelters develop. Natural pockets, protected from strong runoff, protected from shallow erosion, protected from human disturbance. People hike past, hunters walk over them. Children climb trees, dogs dig nearby. Nobody suspects anything unusual. Then a storm arrives, a root partially lifts, fresh soil becomes exposed. Suddenly, a heavy yellow particle catches sunlight. Perhaps not a nugget, perhaps a garnet, perhaps a worn sapphire fragment. Perhaps nothing economically significant, but enough to prove an important idea. Nature occasionally stores dense minerals in surprisingly quiet places, and perhaps that realization alone changes how people move through landscapes. Because prospectors spend years looking downward. Maybe they should occasionally look at what is growing upward instead. And interestingly, roots are not the only living structures capable of preserving valuable materials. Sometimes the most fascinating traps appear only after the tree itself disappears. And interestingly, roots are not the only living structures capable of preserving valuable materials. Sometimes the most fascinating traps appear only after the tree itself disappears. A fallen tree rarely leaves quietly. Decades after decomposition begins, an overturned root plate exposes a bowl-shaped depression beneath it. Most people simply see disturbed soil. Prospectors occasionally see something different, a collection chamber. Leaves blow in, fine sediments wash in, heavy particles stay behind. Storm after storm, season after season, decade after decade. Gold doesn't have to move far. Neither do garnets. Tourmaline fragments behave similarly. Corundum is even more stubborn. Eventually, dense minerals may quietly occupy the bottom of these forgotten cavities. People walk past. Hunters step over them. Photographers kneel beside them. Nobody notices. Until sunlight catches something unusual. But nature is still not finished. Perhaps the most overlooked excavators in prospecting aren't prospectors at all. They're animals, foxes, badgers, ground squirrels, porcupines, wild pigs. Animals dig for comfort. Animals dig for food. Animals dig because instinct tells them to. And occasionally they expose material that erosion had hidden for thousands of years. Fresh clay, dense pebbles, altered fragments, heavy yellow particles. Prospectors occasionally revisit old animal diggings, not because they expect treasure, but because nature has already done part of the excavation. Then another strange observation appears. Moss. Most people associate moss with moisture. They should. But moss also likes stability. Places where fine sediments accumulate. Places where runoff loses energy. Tiny depressions, bedrock hollows, protected pockets. If gold likes becoming comfortable, moss occasionally advertises where comfort exists. Not because moss attracts gold, because moss survives where movement slows. And movement slowing has been helping gold since the day it left its original host rock. Then suddenly, another climax appears. The edge of an old footpath. Not modern, historic. Perhaps livestock crossed there. Perhaps miners crossed there. Perhaps indigenous communities crossed there. Decades pass. Centuries pass. Traffic compacts soil. Runoff changes.
Oh, yeah.
Heavy particles begin concentrating along tiny margins. Prospectors almost never discuss these places. Yet some quietly examine them. Because prospecting eventually stops becoming a search for glitter. It becomes a search for interruptions. Places where nature hesitated. Places where gravity paused. Places where transport became lazy. But perhaps one of the most surprising traps is something people touch every day. An exposed root arch. Imagine a thick root extending over a shallow depression. Years of storms wash sediment beneath it. Fine material escapes. Dense particles remain. Year after year, tiny natural riffles develop. Not unlike miniature sluice boxes. Nobody designed them. Nature built them. And nature has had considerably more time than prospectors. Then another reward arrives. Weathered gemstone soils. Gem-quality tourmalines rarely announce themselves. Corundum fragments certainly don't. Garnets often become overlooked. Beryl fragments become mistaken for ordinary stones. But all of them share something important. They dislike unnecessary movement. When host rocks slowly decompose, gemstones don't suddenly disappear. They negotiate with gravity, just like gold. Some travel, some refuse. Some become trapped inside clay-rich mantles. Others settle into residual pockets. Gold and gemstones are behaving similarly. Not because they form together, but because nature often sorts dense materials using the same rules. Then perhaps the biggest climax of all. The viewer starts questioning every ordinary place they've ever ignored. An old tree, an abandoned stump, animal burrows, moss pockets, root arches, weathered saprolite, collapsed cavities, ancient walking paths, places children play, places campers sleep, places hikers photograph, places prospectors rarely discuss publicly. And perhaps that is exactly why they remain interesting. Because once everybody starts searching rivers, rivers become crowded. Once everybody starts chasing obvious quartz veins become exhausted. But nature rarely depends on popularity. Nature prefers patience. Nature quietly stores stories, and sometimes those stories are hidden beneath places so ordinary that people spend entire lifetimes stepping over them without ever slowing down enough to ask a very simple question. If gold and gemstones both dislike moving when they finally become comfortable, what other quiet places has nature been protecting all along? And perhaps that's what makes hidden gold so fascinating. It rarely stays where people expect it to remain.